Go in with a plan, always track the expenses and the financials separately from the start. It gets a little bit harder to do that later on. So if you do that split and then you like a year or two in start tracking things independently, it's a little bit more difficult.
You're listening to Stories from the Top, an inside guide to better business development. We are here with Kirk Brown once more, the founder and president of Kirk's Lawn Care and Dynamic Celebration Lighting. In this episode, we're going to talk about when and how to create a sister company. Kirk, can you just give us a little intro to DCL and what caused you to decide to spin off of Kirk's Lawn Care with a second entity?
Absolutely. So Dynamic Celebration Lighting is our lighting division of our landscape company. We do holiday, wedding, and event lighting, as well as permanent holiday lighting and landscape lighting. We started that in 2021 as our landscaping business grew, which is a seasonal company. We were very slow in the wintertime for that landscape company. So Dynamic Celebration Lighting was kind of formed out of trying to solve a problem of keeping our employees busy and bringing in revenue in the off-season of our landscaping company.
Very cool. So what was the process of building a totally second company that was still kind of attached to the other one?
Yeah, so I mean, you can start another entity, I guess is the word, as a DBA. So you can still brand another company through existing company as long as you get a separate DBA for it. So that's the route we took. It was the most financial sense, I guess, at the time, just because it kind of being almost like a startup or another division, we didn't want to create a sole like LLC for it. So again, you can use the existing company and then just kind of start up another division with a different name. We got a logo created. Again, we filed for the DBA. We have separate QuickBooks for our two divisions. So again, we can track, the revenue separately or separate bank accounts. So from the beginning, we kind of track a lot of the financials separately as if there are two companies, just so we can see the profitability of each division. And our end goal is to, within the next probably 2 or 3 years, to actually break DCL off to a separate entity entirely. And then that would be its own company.
So you have two different brands, two different bank accounts, but for tax purposes, are you all still one company and you file together and everything?
Correct. Yep.
Okay, gotcha. Just two different brands.
Yep.
Primarily.
Yep.
Yeah, and so branding was the primary, just so you don't have to clutter your website with all that extra.
That, and again, for marketing reasons, SEO reasons, I mean, if you have a separate website for lighting versus trying to stick lighting on a landscaping website, you're never going to perform as well or be noticed or seen as well. I also noticed in 2021 that everybody, painters, pressure washing companies, other landscapers, they were all getting into lighting, but they weren't branding it as a separate company. And that was, again, we wanted to be known as the experts in lighting. We do this, we put the time and money and investment, into honing our craft, doing the training, marketing and branding it separately, having separate trucks that are branded for it. So again, that's kind of was what the mindset of why we did what we did and the marketing, behind it.
What has your approach been to setting up the management structure of the two separate things where I guess you're head of both of them? How do you kind of manage your time and set things up so they...
Well, luckily, the busy seasons of both the companies aren't at the same time. So that works out well. But yeah, I mean, again, DCL, we're still, a couple years in, but it's a lot smaller, and less time required at this moment than what our landscaping business is. So at this moment, it's easier to manage both. As we've, built or added managers to our landscaping company, a lot of our managers kind of have a hybrid role, so they also are helping with the DCL company at this moment, as we're continuing to grow that. And then again, once we get to a certain revenue mark, we're going to split those companies apart and hire separate people for individual or for each entity.
And do your boots on the ground workers, do they work for both companies? Do they have this is your paycheck from DCL this week, or is it all just paid through Kirk's?
It's all paid through Kirk's Lawn Care.
Okay.
Yeah.
What have been the major advantages of separating down into two?
The major advantages of separating into two is just from a liability standpoint. So again, if there was an accident or legal exposure, I guess, from one, it doesn't affect the other. So it just kind of separates the two and provides some protection for that.
Well, I mean, even just like as a brand, like, are you finding that you have different customer bases searching, or like you said, some people were just adding it to their website, but you wanted to break off.
Yeah.
And then you'll be found in your search engine optimization and stuff. Is it totally different customer bases, or is it the same people?
It is a lot of the clientele for our lighting company is typically more higher end, or a higher net income or household income, I guess, than a lot of our existing landscaping clients. We also have an expanded service area for our lighting business versus our landscaping company. So that was another reason why we wanted to brand it separately and have separate websites, because we service much further for our lighting company than we do for our landscaping company. So that also could have gotten confusing if we had the lighting services on the same Kirk's Lawn Care website, but had two different service areas. So,
And with decades of experience of running Kirk's Lawn Care, were you able to have a pretty cohesive business plan and projections moving into?
yeah, I mean, again, as far as the lighting, skills and my ability to know there was a demand, being able to train employees based on my previous experience as doing it as a hobbyist and enthusiast, that was very easy. So yeah, it was just more of getting the systems and processes in place to train the guys, and then be able to market ourselves.
And for accounting and taxes, so how does that work? Is it all just pooled together? Like, this is the DBA stuff under DCL, or is it literally just here's our income, expenses, and?
Yeah. So I mean, again, they're separate QuickBooks, but again, they're all filed together. So.
Okay. Do you have any tips for people who might be considering splitting off if they have a bunch of services under one hat? Any tips or warnings for people?
Again, just go in with it with a plan. I would always track the expenses and the financials separately from the start. I mean, again, I had the foresight to do that from day one. It gets a little bit harder to do that later on. So if you do that split and then you want to, like, a year or two in, start tracking things independently, it's a little bit more difficult. So again, just being able to track the financials separately is big, especially when you're gonna eventually split it off into two entities. Already having that data and this financials just make it so much easier. And again, just treating each company or entity like they're independent. You know what I mean? So again, people who call us at DCL, we have separate phone numbers, we have separate emails. They never even would know that it's part of our landscaping company. Our landscaping company would never know it's part of our DCL. So again, having everything separate, basically, so to the public and everybody else, it looks like two separate companies.
Did you ever want to cross-sell one company to the other? Or?
We do. Yeah. So, I mean, we do through our marketing emails, and then also even on our website, like the DCL website at the bottom, there's a link to our landscaping company. We do cross-reference a lot of those. So again, the database we have of people who request an estimate for Kirk's Lawn Care, we sometimes will send out once a year, maybe an email to them, and then vice versa with our lighting company. We'll cross-reference some of those services. Yeah, so it is actually very good for us to be able to help each other, or help the other brands help each other. So.
Awesome, Kirk. Well, thanks once more for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Stories from the Top is your guide to successful business development. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or find Edge of Cinema on YouTube. Stories from the Top is an Edge of Cinema production, hosted by Matthew Skura and Jeremy Schmidt. To learn more or get in touch, visit edgeofcinema.com/podcast.